We have two very special guests here this morning, Nina and Marsha, sisters of the Reverend.
And they did not come to hear me speak, they came to hear you sing.
Oh.
Because I've been telling them about you. And it's good to have James and Jon here. Thank you as well. And Earl and Ann back again. And yes, my sisters, Linda and Marsha. Linda was a quiet one. They're both older sisters. Linda was a quiet sister. She was in her room a lot doing her own work. And Marsha was the tomboy. And Marsha took care of the bullies that bullied me in school. And I'll tell you this story. One day, I was in a car with one of my friends, and this car came up behind us, almost to the bumper. And it was a car full of guys, and I guess they wanted to fight him. And they were shaking their fists too at the window and everything, and out the window. And so I told my friend Billy, I said, Billy, drive up to Laura Park. My sister's up there. And so we drove up to Laura Park, and we pulled in the park, and sure enough, there was Marsha. And I said, Marsha, these guys behind us are they're threatening us. So she walks away. I look in the mirror, and I look back, and the guy in the car behind us has got the window down, and Marsha's going, and they back up and drive off. So anyway, that's it. You'll notice we have our banner here covering some of the art, but that's our UU banner, represents our congregation. And that's, as you can see, the chalice and all the different colors. That's a good question. Does anyone know who made this?
Yes, but
Barbara?
I'm trying to think of her name. Barbara, can you think of her name? I was just
Penny
thinking.
Kessler.
Oh, Penny Kessler.
Good morning. It was a lot of fun doing the research on the topic today of the Odyssey. Looking back and thinking of 50, 60 years when I was reading it and eventually introducing the gods and goddesses to my fourth graders, who I hope that they're bringing their children and enjoying the movie that is coming, that is out now. So I did go to the Google God to get some quotes from the Odyssey. And like Odysseus would say, where will I begin? There's a time for many words and there is a time for sleep. Even a fool learns something once it hits him. I didn't lie, I just created fiction with my mouth. The journey is the thing. Out of sight, out of mind. Be still, my heart, thou hast known worse than this. Words empty as the wind are best left unsaid. And the last one, by hook or by crook, this peril too shall be something that we will remember.
I feel the current raging around me. Try to summon up my strength once more. I am weary on this journey. Afraid I might not reach that distant shore. I cry for help, feel like I'm sinking. There is no one near me I can see, but there you are in the water with me. You take my hand and guide me graciously. Will you come with me on this journey? Every breath we take, keep reaching for the dawn. I know alone I will falter. But with a good friend near me, I will carry on. There is a kindness in your smile,
and a gentleness within your speech.
you assure me your love surrounds me.
And I know safety is at last within my reach.
Will you come with me on this journey? Every breath we take, keep reaching for the dawn. I know alone I will falter, but with a good friend near me, I will carry on. It's an illusion we carry with us as we wade on through the waters of our lives.
That we must be strong and hold our own here. But a helping hand will save us by and by.
Will you come with me on this journey? Every breath we take, keep reaching for the dawn. I know alone I will falter, but with a good friend near me, I will carry on. With a good friend near me, I will carry on.
Well, that's it. Have a nice day, folks.
That's what we paid for.
It's done, it's over. Perfect message perfect song for the message. Don't you think? Yeah. All that water and all that swimming and all that friend holding your hand, that's good. Thank you.
You bet.
How much owe you for that?
Yeah. Oh, we'll talk about that later. Big bucks.
Join with me, please, to the work of this fellowship, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action we call community. We dedicate our lives, and these are our offerings. Our reading is number 608, and it is the clay jug. Clay jug. And this is a reading from the Islamic tradition, from Islam. Inside this clay jug there are canyons and pine mountains, and the maker of canyons and pine mountains.
All 7 oceans are inside, and hundreds of billions of stars.
The acid that tests gold is there, and the one who judges jewels.
And the music from the streams no one touches, and the source of all water.
If you want the truth, I'll tell you the truth.
Friends, listen. The God whom I love is inside.
Okay. I'm sure you all have heard all the talk and some fuss about Christopher Nolan's new release of the Odyssey. It's been in just about every paper under the sun, and people are making comments about it. From everything from Elon Musk, who didn't like the fact that Hillary was black. Who cares what he has to say? But anyway, do listen. How many people have seen the movie? All right. Would you recommend it, Jean?
Yes, it's not like reading the book, but it is a good adaptation.
Okay. Would you recommend it, Jim? John? Rob, okay. It's not too Hollywood?
It's a little Hollywood.
But you were never bored in 3.5 hours.
Okay, 3.5 hours, okay.
That's a long picture.
Okay.
Great special effects.
3.5 hours. Well, I've got to reduce 3.5 hours to about 5 minutes to tell you about the Odyssey. If you haven't seen it or read the book, I read it long ago, but it's just little tidbits of it that I remember. How many people read the book? Okay. Because the book, I'm not sure how, I don't think the book and the movie blended. You know, I particularly don't like what I heard was the ending of the story, how it ended in the movie as opposed to how it ended in the book. But anyway, one of the New York Times articles was that we need this hero story. We need to hear this hero story in our culture today. And I wasn't able to read the article because I don't subscribe to New York Times except the headlines. So anyway, I'm going to try to tell you the Odyssey, and I'm going to try to reduce it to about 5 minutes. And first I'm going to tell you about the major characters. There's 30 of them. Just kidding. I'm going to tell you the main characters, and then a little bit about the plot, a little bit about the major themes, and then last of all, the influence that it's had on Western culture, Western psyche for over 2,500 years. That's how it's a little bit older than that, but about that. Anyway, principal characters, of course, Odysseus, who is a veteran of the war in Troy, and he's trying to get home to his wife and his son. His wife, Penelope. She's longing for her husband. She hasn't seen him in 20 years. She's wondering where he is. She's faithful, but her house has been taken over by suitors who are corrupt and sowing chaos in her home and trying to win her hand in marriage. Telemachus is the son of Odysseus. He was born when Odysseus left for the war, and as the book opens, he's coming of age. Athena, goddess of war and reason, who loves Odysseus and is trying to help him get home. Calypso, a goddess nymph, who also loves Odysseus. She offers him immortality if he'll stay with her and be her husband. Poseidon, god of the sea, he hates Odysseus because Odysseus blinded his son, the One-Eyed Cyclops, Polyphemus. Okay, I knew I was saying that. Polyphemus. Poseidon is determined to make Odysseus' voyage home as difficult as possible. Antinous is the arrogant, selfish leader of the suitors. He's corrupt, he's arrogant, and he'll be the first one that Odysseus kills when he comes home. And Circe, bewitching queen of Aea, who turns men into swine. But she allows Odysseus to go home as soon as he expresses the desire. Those are the main characters. Lots of others, but those are the main characters. And I'm just going to briefly describe the plot, and I'm going to try to. I don't want to leave anything out, so I'm going to read a little bit so that I don't leave anything out. 9 years after the fall of Troy, Odysseus is trapped on the island of Calypso. He wants to go home. Finally, through Athena's intervention, Calypso releases Odysseus. He's elated by his freedom. He tries to sail home, but Poseidon sees him and wrecks him on a strange island. There, Odysseus, through his wits, is able to persuade them to help him get home. He persuades them by charming them and telling them the story of his adventures since the fall of Troy and all the places he's been. The most important of these, early on his journey, is Polyphemus' cave. Polyphemus is a lawless, man-eating cyclops. And when Odysseus and his men make their way into the cave, he captures them and starts to eat them. Through his wits and trickery, Odysseus manages to escape. After this, he makes his way to Aea, where a bewitching queen, Circe, lives. Circe turns men into swine, but Odysseus is finally able to get her to let him go on. But he must first travel to the land of the dead and consult seer Tiresias to learn how to appease the anger of Poseidon. After the land of the dead, Odysseus sails back past Circe's island, and he threads the needle between Scylla and Charybdis. Scylla is a man-eating, six-headed monster over here. Charybdis is a great whirlpool that sucks the whole ship down, or that would suck it down. Odysseus manages to get by. He is eventually wrecked by the gods and is stranded on Calypso's island. Calypso falls in love with him, keeps him for her husband for 7 years. Having finished that story, Odysseus wins passage home. The Ephesians take him home to Ithaca and leave him there. He disguises himself as a beggar and enters the palace, enters his home, just as Penelope is deciding to stage a contest. She says she'll marry the man who can string Osiris's old bow with ease and shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads, which they can't do. But Osiris, as a beggar, finally gets his hands on the bow. And armed with the bow, he attacks and kills all of the suitors. Only after killing all the suitors does Odysseus reveal himself to be the faithful husband of Penelope. She gives him a final test. He passes the test. They are united in happiness, and they set their island home in order. They restore honesty. They restore order in the kingdom. And I think that's probably the part that this New York Times article was telling us we need right now. Some hero who will come and get rid of the corruption and the chaos and restore order. Well, that's the journey that has been evolving through time of humans on a quest to get to some place. Now, I was talking to my wife about that. She said, how come there are no female hero stories, heroines? I thought, well, you're right. But then I remembered a reflection I shared with you all several years ago about Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Remember that? And I said, Dorothy she's the hero. And she's on that journey as well. And you'll notice there's similarities between those stories, but you can't get caught up in those. Those are just the particular details. If you get behind those stories, you see the pattern. Now, Joseph Campbell says the pattern is this. You leave home, which we do every morning when we get up. The minute you walk out that door. And then there's the call to adventure. So the hero answers the call to the adventure. But then he says there's also a refusal to call. But anyway, there's a call to adventure. The hero responds to the call. The hero goes out, and there's a series of trials and tests, tribulations, suffering, pain. I love his original image of that. His original metaphor for that period in a person's life or in a person's day, he calls the belly of the well. So you leave, you go out, you go through the belly of the well, your trials and tribulations. Then you find that treasure, or whatever, that strength, that courage, and you return. And so it's a circle. And you see both in the Odyssey, he leaves home, he goes out, all these trials and tribulations, all this stuff that goes on. He comes back home. And of course, he's a changed person. He's transformed. Dorothy, naive little girl, gets in trouble, falls in the pig pen. You know the story. Her aunt says, "You're always getting in trouble, Steph." She says, there's somewhere over the rainbow. She goes out. Of course, it's a dream. She goes out. She comes back around. She meets the witch. She learns how to use her reason, Scarecrow. She learns how to use her heart, the Tin Man. She learns courage. She comes home. She's a grown woman. And she says, and I don't want to get carried away with this is a different story, but it's the same pattern, you see. It's the same pattern. And there's always the risk that you're not going to make it. You're going to just quit, or you're going to get scared. Anyway, I love what Dorothy says when she gets home, because she says she's laying on her deathbed, and she's laying on her bed. Her Aunt Em says to her, "Well, it was just a dream." And Dorothy says, "Well, I don't care." She said, "I'm transformed." She said, "You're here, you're here, you're here." And she points to every one of them, and she says, "I love you all. I love you all." So, see that pattern of the call to adventure. And every day when we get up, it's a call to adventure, because you don't know what's going to happen today. You don't know what's going to happen today. Your ship might get wrecked today. You might be floating in the water, and suddenly you find a helping hand. But you don't know. Every day is an adventure. So you have the call to the venture, the trials, the tribulations, the belly of the whale, and then the return home. Now, I don't read any of that, as you well know, as literal history. It never really happened. But like Gilbert Murray says, mythologies never happened. They're always happening. They're always happening. As you may recall, in the newsletter that Don sent out, there was a little synopsis of what I wrote in there. And one of the things that I said in that synopsis was that there's a one-eyed Cyclops living in every one of us. And, you can search the world over, but you're not going to find a one-eyed Cyclops anywhere. Because the one-eyed Cyclops is not an empirical fact, it's a psychological fact. And it's merely saying that we have fears within us that we have to come to grips with. And you know the story. Odysseus and his men go inside this cave, which to me is symbolic of going within, your deep unconscious, finding your fears, and then through your wits and your reasons, somehow conquering those fears. And then once you conquer that fear, you gain its power. You gain the power of that fear for yourself. The opposite of fear is not courage. Courage is what faces fear. We're never going to get rid of our fears. But we don't have to let them eat us up. And that's what's happening in this part of the myth. It's saying that your fear can eat you alive if you let it, and basically just destroy your life. Or you can face your fear you can wrest that power from it and have courage. And that was Dorothy, the lion. She needed that courage. She got that courage. Life requires that courage, Last night, I woke up this morning and rewrote part of this reflection because I had a dream last night that I was being pursued by a polar bear. And I was running from it. And at one point, I grabbed my shoe and I threw my shoe behind me and it stopped the sniffing. And I thought, okay, I'm out of here. But then I looked back and it's behind me again. And so, first thing I did when I got this morning was I Googled what did I Google? Can you run from a polar bear? And it's weird because it said, you can't run from a polar bear. Don't run. Because a polar bear can run up to 45 miles an hour, and if you try to run from it, you're dead. And I watched a video of a man who was caught by a polar bear in Alaska, and he barely made it alive. But what it said was that if any of y'all are ever in the Arctic and you see a polar bear, it said, don't run. You know what you're supposed to do? Face it. Now that takes guts. It said, face the polar bear and make noises. Make yourself as big as you can. Swell up, whatever. But if you have a gun, shoot it, which I would hate to see that happen. If you have bear spray, spray it. But face it and move back slowly. And to me that was saying, face those fears. You've got to face those fears. You can't run away from them. And they're never going to go away. You're never going to, some fears are good things. It's good to be afraid. If you see a mom bear robbed of her cubs, I think it'd be real smart to be afraid. Anyway, now see that image of One-Eyed Cyclops who's eating people. Think of how powerful that image is, and that's a mythical image. But we've reduced all that mythical imagery. We've reduced it to logic, to abstract concepts that to me are just cold and dead. They don't do a thing. I can say to somebody, well, you're suffering from phobia. Well, I can give you a picture of phobia because the word phobia comes from the Greek god Phobos. And the Greek god Phobos is a terrifying looking monster. And for a child to see that, you realize the impact of a phobia. And phobia, lots of people suffer from phobias. I grew up with a phobia of darkness. I was terrified of darkness when I was a child, when I was a teenager, and even now as an adult. Sometimes I'm terrified of darkness. And I'm terrified of being alone in the dark. That's a phobia. And you try to deconstruct it. As I said, there's nothing in the darkness. It's only because you can't see what's there. It's the unknown. And so, but you can see that mythological image, which we say, oh, that's just a fairy tale. Oh, that's just a dream. Oh, that doesn't really happen. Well, it does. And that mythical image captures, to me, the core of that experience rather than some word, well, you have a phobia. An abstract concept of a phobia. Well, phobias are difficult to live with. But to me, to cut to the chase, to me, what Campbell is saying, this is a human, universal experience and struggle. know, if you ever go to China or Japan and go to a Buddhist temple, you'll see two wrathful-looking deities outside the door before you go inside. And this wrathful deity, and they look scary, has his mouth like this. On the other side is another wrathful deity, and he has his mouth open. And the one on this side represents desire. The one on that side represents fear. And it's the same message you're finding in Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz and the Odyssey. The only way to get into the enlightenment of the Buddhahood, you've got to pass through fear and desire. This is the same message. It's a universal human message. It's universal human evolution. It's how we've evolved. The ideal of evolving. You know, I wrote a newspaper article, and it was titled Chuck Edwards and the Odyssey. You know, and I feel for Chuck, because Chuck got stuck on the island of Calypso, so to speak, right? He got carried away with his desires. And when a friend tried to give a hand to him and say, look, you're courting danger here, stop it, his response was anger, rather than a trusted friend saying to him, you're crossing the boundaries. And that's an unfortunate thing, but it doesn't happen with just Chuck Edwards. It's happening a lot, and more of it's coming out with politicians on both sides that aren't able to somehow break through that fear and that desire to get to that place where they want to come home and they want to make things right. They want to create order out of chaos, and they don't want to be corrupt or corrupted. So again, you know, myths never happened. They're happening all the time. And I could say to you, you know, Jesus does not lead us around suffering. He leads us through it. And I could say Buddha does not lead us around suffering. He leads us through it. And I could say Odysseus doesn't lead us around suffering to detour it. He leads us through it. And, you know, unless you get stuck in metaphors, you're going to get hung up about the language I'm using. You may not like the sound of Jesus. You may not like the sound of Buddha. And, you know, Joseph Campbell says you're getting stuck in your metaphor. You're eating the menu. You're eating the menu. And I'm telling you, there's thousands of people out there that are eating the menu all the time. And I told my wife, I said, just like that Buddha story, the Buddha is pointing to the moon, and all the disciples, oh, it's the finger, the finger, the finger. And then, and the Buddha said, well, no, it's what it's pointing to. And then my wife goes, well, then it's the moon. I said, well, no, it's not the moon. It's here. Your home is here. Your home is here. Your heart. Your home is where the heart is. It's your heart. It's the core of your being. That's your home. That's your true home. You know, it's not the house we live in. It's what we're building inside of us each day. That house we're building in here. Which requires us to go on that journey. You have a hero inside of you. You have a hero inside of you. You know, stories all over the world. You know, all these hero stories are never about people getting rich. rich, like Elon Musk. They don't write stories about him. They don't, he'll never go down in history. He'll never last 2,700 years. He'll be forgotten. So what are all these stories written about the heroes? It's not about material success. All these stories are about coming home to that core of who you are and feeling a sense of worth about who you are. And living from that, living from that core. We don't live at the center, we live from it. And so facing our fears, coming to grips with our desires, some desires, he had a desire to get home. That's a good desire. I want to end with this quote from Joseph Campbell because people have said, oh, Joseph Campbell, the Journey of the Hero, that's all about the male ego. And I think that's too bad because if they think that Odysseus is all about the male ego, they're missing the point. It's not about the male ego. It's not about puffing up the male ego. And here's what Joseph Campbell says, and this is this is how he heads off in his book, The Power of Myth. It's called A Hero Journey, and he opens that dialogue that he had with Bill Warriors with this quote, and I'm going to give it to you because it's vital. We have not even to risk the adventure alone, for the heroes of all times have gone before us. The labyrinth is thoroughly known. We have only to follow the thread of the hero path, and where we had thought to find an abomination, we shall find a god. And where we had thought to slay another, we shall slay ourselves. And where we had thought to travel outward, we shall come to the center of our own existence. Now listen closely. And where we had thought to be alone, we shall be with all the world. So it's not this ego journey of this single male figure conquering the world. It's about this gaining the sense of coming to the center of our own existence and being a part of the whole world, realizing that we're all one, and that's why I put at the top of the order of the service these words from Lao Tse. Greater, and he says greater is he, but I wanted to make it gender inclusive, so it's a little bit awkward, but I'm going to read it. It's at the top of your order of service. Greater is she or he who conquers herself or himself than she or he who conquers the world. Thank you. Well, now I'll get the big head.
Yeah.
And I'll have to get shipwrecked. All right, fellers, all yours. What you going to sing for us?
We're going to sing. We're going to ask you all to sing with us. Even you, Ernie. Who knows the Hebrew word for peace? Shalom. Shalom. Who knows the Arabic word or the Islamic word for peace? Salam. So peace, salam, shalom. Repeat after me. Peace, salam, shalom. You got the words already. Goes like this. Peace, salam, shalom. 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 Peace, salam, shalom.
salam, shalom. Peace, 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 salam, shalom.
Thank you.
Thank you, James and John. Somebody take the battery out of their car. They'll have to stay down and land them. Okay, we have a little bit of time, a few minutes. If anybody has any comments, queries, or opposing viewpoints, raise your hand, Nick will give you the mic.
Yeah.
Jay?
Well, two. One is a recommendation. If you haven't read the Odyssey recently, read Emily Wilson's version. It's a very good read. I read it over 2 days. It's about 13 hours to go through the whole thing. But it's, you know, all the stuff he had in high school with all the highfalutin phrases, and that's all gone. She tells a very compelling story. The other point is Star Wars. Star Wars is all the hero story. It was intended to be just a hero story. And there is a female version of it too, later on.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you. Yes, Joe?
We were listening to the Ezra Klein podcast. Has anybody listened to his podcast? Well, he had one on the Odyssey. I didn't listen to it till Friday. I don't know when it came out. But anyway, so he's talked about, he related, he thought the director was directly trying to relate it to our times. And he's talking about how when the Odyssey appears to be kind of or at least Odysseus appears to be a trickster, and he talks about the tension between a trickster in stories and the person who's trying to do the right thing. And so Odysseus looks like a trickster, but he actually says, no, the real trickster is some of these other characters in our government right now. Because historically, tricksters are trying to destroy things, whereas heroes are trying to.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't hear any.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't talk okay. Well, anyway, so Ezra Klein, and one of the things that he finishes with, he goes into a lot of information about what's happening in Washington and how it relates. What he did say was how the right is glorifying cruelty right now, but if you go back to the Old Testament, Leviticus, he quoted the foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. And the Torah says, what is hateful to you, do not.
I can't hear.
Oh,
Well,
I don't know
yeah.
what to do.
Carry on, Joe, you're all right.
Just do what you can do.
Yeah.
Okay. The Torah says, what is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. And then this person, I don't know who it was, says, and that is the whole Torah. Is it too loud or too soft?
That's
You're
fine.
good, you're okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Matthew, Jesus says, in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law of the prophets. And then he talks about Zeus's law, which demands hospitality for strangers because you never know who the stranger is. It might be a god.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, it's the most wonderful, not too long podcast. Well, it might be an hour, but it's like I was spellbound. And it related to all the destruction that's happening right now is not the work of a good force. It's the work of the historical trickster who tries to destroy the good in society. So anyway, sorry it took so long.
No, that's okay. another mythical figure that, yeah, that's apropos to what's going on, yeah. My only concern with Christopher Nolan's ending is that they chose the self-exile of Odysseus and Penelope. And to me, I mean, the subtle message in that is, you know, you better be thinking about leaving this country because it's going to get so bad. I mean, and who knows, maybe that's not his message, but that's not what the book says, the original story. That kind of concerned me, though, that we need to get out of this country if we want to survive. I'm implying that what it might imply. Anyway, thank you all. Have a great day, and if you would join with me, we extinguish the flame of this chalice. Let us follow the light of truth until we meet again. And grab a hand next to you and let's sing this song. Spirit